So hello everyone again for another little report about the Parasha. So this week's Parasha is Chukat, and I just want to talk about actually a bit of a more general idea, but we'll source it in this week's Parasha. So the second pasuk of this week's Parasha talks about Zot Chukat HaTorah Asher Tziva Hashem Le'emor. So what's this Chukat HaTorah? What's this Chok of the Torah? That's the Para Aduma. And famously, it's the red heifer. This is actually the mitzvah that is least understood in the entire Torah. There are, first, Shlomo HaMelech didn't know about it. He was considered the wisest man. There are midrashim that said that, or at least the Chazals, sources that say that the only person who understood this was actually Korach, the infamous character of last week's Parsha. There are also sources that say that Moshe was the only person who understood it. Regardless, very few people understood what was going on with this mitzvah. Even like the wisest and greatest Talmidei Chacham we've ever had, very elusive, not entirely sure what's going on here. So, what does that mean? What relevance does that have to us? And where do we see ideas like this elsewhere in the Torah? So I just want to talk about a couple of, there are different categorizations of mitzvahs in general. There are, for example, aseh velo taseh, positive mitzvahs and negative mitzvahs. For example, giving tzedakah, that's a positive mitzvah, that's a go do it. This is a go do mitzvah. Then there's a lo ta'aseh, negative mitzvah, things to refrain from. For example, don't murder or don't steal, right? Do not do this, do not do that. That's a negative mitzvah. Okay, so that's one categorization. Another type is between man and his neighbor, right? And between man and God, right? So for example, between man and his neighbor would, again, be giving tzedakah, giving charity, loving your neighbor as yourself, things like that, or not taking revenge, not bearing a grudge. These are all between like man and his fellow man. Between man and God would be like Lo tisah Hashem Elokecha l'shav. Don't you take God's name in vain, because that specifically relates to between us and between God. That's a different categorization. But there's another one. There are chukim and there are mishpatim. Right? What's the difference? A mishpat is actually a mitzvah tzichliyot. It's a mitzvah that you could kind of figure out on your own. After all, most societies have rules against not murdering people. That's something that the fabric of every society is built on. The fact that we don't expect people, our neighbors, to murder us. And there are laws against it. There are also laws against stealing in every society. These things are taboo in every society you find. These are the kinds of things that people have been able to figure out. That's a mishpat. So what's a chok? A chok are laws that are unique to Judaism, because really the human mind wouldn't have fathomed them on their own. They wouldn't have just come up with them. What's an example? Like kosher or shatnez. Shatnez is not mixing linen and wool together in your clothing. Often you need to check them out in the most, I think, frequent time it really happens, at least for guys, is actually in the back collar of your jackets, of your sports coats. And that's where often many people go have them checked for shatnez. It is a mitzvah d'oraita, so it's pretty severe. So that's something that we don't quite understand. Like, why? Wool and linen, like, who ultimately cares? So that's a chok. We can't really figure it out. We wouldn't have come up with this on our own. And in terms of kosher, I just want to bring this up because this is a pretty wide misconception. People think kosher has a lot to do with it's not healthy, and the Torah commanded this to us so we could keep our bodies healthy. But really, that just I don't know where the source for that is, but it's certainly not in the Torah, at the very least in the Chumash. The Chumash is explicit about why this is commanded. Nothing to do with keeping healthy. After all, there are millions, if not billions, of people who don't keep kosher, and they seem to be doing just fine. So just in Vayikra, the third Chumash, right, the third book of Moses, at the end of Shmini, in the 11th chapter, it goes through all the laws of land animals and fowl and sea animals, and then the critters, the little bugs, and what you can eat. And at the end, the Torah says it explicitly. So why do you have to do it? So look at chapter 11, verse 44. Keni Adonai Elohechem v'yitkadishtem v'yitem kedoshim ki kedosh ani, because I'm the Lord your God, and you shall be holy, and you should make yourselves holy, and you will be holy because I am holy. And then the pasuk goes on and says, like, I am God who elevates you from the land of Egypt. That's in 11:44 and 45. And then later on at the in Kedoshim, at the end of Kedoshim, God again says it, "V'vitem li kedoshim ki kedosh ani Hashem v'avdil etchem min ha'amim liot li." And you shall be holy, because I am holy, your God, and I will separate you from the nations to be to me. So it's very clear in the Chumash. This has nothing to do with like a rational reason. This has nothing to do with health. The fact that there may be health benefits is a side point. That's certainly possible. That's of course an advantage that often happens with keeping Torah. That there are other, there are more like rational and reasonable reasons to keep it, but that's not the reason why we keep the mitzvah. Fine. So now that we know that, what is this like chok? After all, like, so why do we keep these in general? What's the underlying reason? So in the Shmona Prakim, which is the Rambam's introduction to Pirkei Avot, he discusses, I believe it's in the 6th chapter. So it's a very interesting discussion. When you're doing mitzvahs, is it better to have an internal, like a built-in resistance to wanting to do them? Or is it better to kind of just, for it to flow more naturally, like, yeah, I would have wanted to do this anyway, so great. So it's machloket. Some people say it's better to overcome resistance to want to do the mitzvahs, because then you're like growing more. But the person says, no, it's better to be kind of a natural tzaddik, like you want to do these mitzvahs, this is what you would have done anyway. So which one is it? Is it the first or is it the second? Better to have resistance or not to have resistance? So the Rambam says like this, it's like, oh, that depends if you're talking about a chok or a mishpat. If it's a mishpat, right, like do not murder and do not steal, that's the kind of thing the Torah would say. You should not be overcoming resistance to want to do these things. The Torah does not condone having an internal desire to murder everyone around you. That is not something we endorse. Better to not want to do that, and therefore keep these mitzvahs like that. I don't kill people because I don't want to kill people. That's great. That's the higher level. The lower level is wanting to kill people and not doing it because the Torah commands us not to. Better to just not have that desire to begin with. When it comes to a chok, however, right, like let's say not like eating a non-kosher food, better to overcome desire. I believe there's actually a Gemara about this, that if there's something that's non-kosher put in front of you, say like a cheeseburger or a cheesesteak or crab, some kind of shellfish, which is also to eat, we shouldn't say, oh, this is disgusting, that's not why I'm eating it. I actually think it's also the Rambam who says this. We're not eating it because it's disgusting. It's probably delicious. There are, again, millions and billions of people who eat these things. They seem to take great delight in eating these things, so it probably is tasty. It probably smells tasty, it looks great. However, we don't do it. Why? Again, not because it's disgusting, but because God commanded us to. We don't eat this because God commanded us to, even though we actually want to. It's better to overcome resistance in doing this. And this leads into a most amazing topic about, is it greater to be commanded to, is it that there's a statement, Gadol ha-mitzuvah ve'oseh, mimi she'eno mitzuvah ve'oseh. Greater is one who's commanded to do something and does it, than someone who is not commanded to do something and does it. Now the big question is why. I would have thought that if there's something that spontaneously welled up within me and I wanted to go do good, that would be the higher level. I want to go do something, so I'm acting on that action. That's how most of us would think of it. If I'm only doing a positive action because someone told me to do it, that doesn't sound right. Like, you're only doing this good thing because someone else told you to do it. What's so great about that? That's not so good. You're not good. You're doing it because someone else is good. So what's the idea here? Why is someone who's commanded to do something greater than someone who's not commanded to do it? Why is that? There are, I'm sure, several reasons for this. I'm familiar with two. One, briefly, is because you're getting over the Yetzer Hara. All of us have, if we want to do something and then someone tells us to do it, some we decide kind of not to, maybe I don't want to do this so much. So it's a good idea, eventually we'll have to do some things that we don't want to do. So it's good to start, working and like building those muscles of doing things that we may not want to do. That's one idea. That's very briefly, obviously not going fully into that. There's obviously more there, but that's that for now. The second idea is something I heard from Rabbi Tatz. Amazing idea. Here it is. So why is someone who's commanded to do something greater than someone who is not? And the answer is because ultimately, if you're only doing something because you want to do it, then the greatest person you can be is who you currently are. What does that mean? Let's use a personal example. When I was 16 years old, I was in France with my family, including my mother, and we were on the subway, and we saw this beggar, and my mom gave me some money, and told me, go give it to the beggar. Great. So I did it. That was very exciting. 5 minutes later, we saw another beggar. And the mom gave me some more money, and she said, go give it to that beggar too. I was like, Mom, what are you, like, why? You already gave 5 minutes ago some other beggar, he got money, you've done your mitzvah of the day of tzedakah, enough. You're like, we'll give tomorrow. Mom was like, be quiet, just take the money and go give it to him. And I couldn't figure this out. It really puzzled me. I was like, why would you do that? You were just going to keep giving money out? And I thought about it a little bit, and I figured this out. I think what my mom was doing was, just because I gave one person tzedakah, doesn't mean that that helped the other person. I have to be aware of, just because you helped one person doesn't mean that other person got help. Your obligation isn't necessarily over because you helped one person. There are other people in this world, and you need to be aware of their needs and try to give to them. When I was 16 years old, I just didn't think like that. And I started to think like that because my mom taught me differently. So what happens is, when you're commanded by someone else to do something, you now tap into a stronger anchor than you are. Because if I had just been left to my own devices, I never would have figured that out, right? So someone who's commanded is greater because he's attaching himself to a greater moral authority. The greater the moral authority, the more potential you have to become great yourself. And that's why someone who's commanded and does is greater than someone who is not commanded and does. Because when you attach yourself to the Torah, you're connecting yourself to God. When you connect yourself to God, that's the ultimate goodness. It's infinite depth and infinite wisdom, and when you connect yourself to a source like that, then there's just infinite potential for growth and greatness, because God is the ultimate commander, and if we take his commandments and work with them, then we're effectively fusing into one with him, and we connect him in that way, and that's what we're doing when we perform mitzvahs. That's the idea. I'm sorry I went a little longer than expected. Have a wonderful Shabbat. Take care, and hope all is well. Thank you.